Hey, welcome everybody. It's time once again for another episode of Health Simplified, a simple guide to a healthier life. Is there such a thing? Well, let's talk to the man who seems to know, Dr. Justin Fessler from Fyzical Therapy and Balance Centers in Lake Forest. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. How you doing, Paul?
I'm amazed at how simple health can be and how complicated everybody makes it, or confusing. I read contradictory things. Today you're going to talk about exercise. I got a million people say, exercise this way, don't do that, got to do this. Can you simplify that topic for us here today?
We're going to try. So I have the pleasure of having Jennifer Manning, the Jennifer Manning.
The Jennifer Manning.
Physical Therapy and Balance Centers. It's the only place she is. And she agreed to come on here today to talk about exercise.
It couldn't have been easy to get her here because she's in demand.
She is, yeah. You guys know personally, I guess, right?
Well, full disclosure, I guess we're supposed to say this. I took my wife in. I not only produced this podcast, we actually took advantage of the service and said, let's try it out, because my wife's in her 70s. She was exercising at home like she has her whole life, very fit, loves to exercise, self-trained, self-taught, thinks she has all the answers, and she hurt herself doing something in her arm. It didn't get better, got worse. 2 years have gone by. All the doctors say, you're 70-something. That's it. That's your life. We took her in, and Jennifer, I started explaining. Jennifer's like, no, I got it. You don't have to explain it to me. I got it. I'm like, well, let me, no, I got it. I see it. Whatever. And I'm like, okay, I'll leave the room. And all of a sudden, she's got a prescription and things, and it can help, and we're doing this, and we're working on this thing, and she's seeing results. After nobody, lots of other PTs, physical therapists, doctors, pain specialists, blah, 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 nothing. Everybody just kind of shrugged and went, well, you're old. It's going to happen. You shouldn't be exercising like that.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. So I want to hear.
All right.
Not just about her, but how we all should be exercising.
Of course.
And so we don't hurt ourselves. And if we do, because we don't want to give up exercising. But many of us do at some point in time.
Yes, that's true.
All right. So I'll shut up and let you guys launch into it here.
Thank you. I know it's hard. It's hard for you. I know. I know you.
It is. All right.
So before I go on, I just want to say I really have appreciated Jennifer's worked with me for 7 years now, and I think that's like common law marriage now, isn't it? Like 7
sort
years.
of.
Yeah.
Work marriage.
Yeah.
Yep.
But she's been amazing. She's smart. She cares about her patients as much as I've seen any therapist. She's had the background in terms of she's taught at university level. She's helped, I'm going to read some of this. She helped some of the athletes going through the NFL Combine, has treated medical issues, but also post-surgical issues. And then she's also developed and taught courses in orthopedics, therapeutic exercise, modalities, electrical therapies. So she really comes from a great foundation. Beyond that, if you come into our clinic, you can tell where Jennifer is because there's a lot of laughing going on. So that's the other side that I love about Jennifer is all of her patients not only love her, but have a great time with her and respect her because she cares so much. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So let's get into, as far as the topic of the day, which is exercise, but we're going to go into detail as far as how that affects our muscles.
Right.
And maybe the various, I know you had talked about the various fiber types of muscle and how various exercises affect that. So I don't know if you want to start with what causes, sarcopenia, for instance, which is that kind of atrophy that happens over time.
Yes. So first, I want to touch base on the fact that the ACSM puts out these guidelines for exercise for everyone that are the general rules. And they typically state that everybody should have a minimum of 150 minutes a week of aerobic type exercise, as well as at least 2 days a week of moderate to vigorous muscle group weightlifting or resistive exercise. So nothing that you and I are going to talk about today should take away from those guidelines.
Right.
However, I think what's interesting about our job and what we enjoy doing at Fyzical is the fact that we look at each individual and what they specifically need. And I think there's a little bit of science background that people might be interested in that will help them identify what will help them the most.
Right.
So that's the direction we're going to go today. So we're going to take a little journey. We're going to go back into the science about what you and I learned maybe way back when
Right.
we went to Chico State. I mean, funny that Justin and I didn't know each other, but we went to the same universities. And then also,
Did
we're
you
gonna-
guys go to USC too? I got to throw that
We
in
did.
there.
We did.
See that?
We
Yeah.
did.
Chico State's a fun school to go to, but it ain't USC.
I always
Hey,
say
come on.
it was a great educational foundation, but that's where I got my social skills. So.
Yes.
So we're going to go back and look at kind of what you and I first learned about in exercise phys, which is fiber typing. And then we're going to move forward into the science about how aging and disease process can affect your muscles, which I think a lot of people will be interested to hear. Defining sarcopenia, and then maybe what is the best type of exercise for you based on your particular issues that you may be having. One thing I want everyone to think about as we go through this journey together is the fact that we're all of us humans, we're all animals. And the job of an animal is to survive. That's what our brains teach us to do. That's what our innate body function is to survive. It may seem different because we have so many other different things going on in our life from day to day. We have emotions. We have jobs that we do, but the basic thing is to survive. So how does losing muscle mass affect our survival? And I think that's kind of the core of what we're getting to today with what you and I see with all of our patients at Fyzical. So to jump into a little bit of the science, hopefully not to bore everybody, but our muscles, they're these nice little packages. They attach to bones via tendons. They've got all these different fibers inside. They have a nerve that innervates these different fiber bundles. And when our brain tells them to contract, whether consciously or subconsciously, they'll contract and they'll support and move bones. So there's different fibers. Us humans have 3 different fibers. And the reason why this is important to go through these is that the fibers have different functions. So we have the first fiber, which is a type 1 fiber, and it's aerobic. Everybody understands aerobic exercise, kind of getting your heart rate going, repetitive cyclical activity. Well, that's using mostly these type 1 fibers. They're highly resistant to fatigue. They can last for hours. We can go and go and go. That's their typical use. And they would be maybe in your back muscles or deep ab muscles.
Like postural stuff,
Yeah, postural stuff. And so when I go through these fiber types, remember that each of our muscles have all these fibers that I'm going to discuss, but there's different percentages of those amounts of those fibers based on what we need to do and our genetic predisposition. So those type 1 fibers, those are our aerobic, postural, anti-fatigue muscle fibers. Then we have our type 2A fibers. Those are more of our strength endurance. They're aerobic, but also anaerobic, meaning that they get their energy from blood supply sources, okay, creating ATP through using oxygen, which comes through the blood supply. But then also there's a different type of phosphorylation that goes on with that's a little bit quicker that makes them anaerobic. They don't have to use oxygen inside of that chemical reaction to create the ATP in order to create energy for that muscle to contract or that fiber. And those are our strength endurance. So
Can I just interrupt? Well,
Yes,
you're
sir.
throwing a bunch of initials out. ATP, what's that mean?
adenosine triphosphate, okay, and it's a chemical that goes through that's basically the foundation of our energy source, okay, into the mitochondria. And that's another cellular piece. So without getting too chemical, they do use oxygen, but these type 2A fibers can also create energy without using oxygen. And that's kind of the basis of the depth that we're going to go in for today. And then for the type 2X fibers, these are more of our fast twitch power fibers. So they're generally in a very low percentage in the body, but when you think about individuals that you see on TV are Olympians that are super fast swimmers, sprinters, people that have to do something like 30 seconds or a minute or less that are so fast, explosive. Those are our kind of explosive fibers. So they're very fatigable. They don't last a long time with energy source, but they can create a really fast energy source and turn on really quickly. So those 3 fiber types, again, they are in just about every single muscle we have, but the percentage of that fiber type basically is due to what that muscle needs to be doing. So when you look at your type 2A, your strength endurance, type 2X, your more explosive power, fast twitch muscle that turns on really quickly, those are in like the leg muscles, the glute muscles, pec muscles. So muscles that you need a lot of explosive activity that generate a lot
like
of
jumping and stuff like that, right?
Correct.
And sprinting,
Yes. Yes. Push-ups. Everyone knows that push-ups are hard. Sprinting, that type of thing. So we have these 3 different types of muscle fibers, okay? And we talked about how there's different percentages of each within the muscle. And the next thing I want to shift to is what happens to these muscle fibers, because different fiber types are affected with the aging and the disease process. And I think our patients that come into us wonder why can't I stand for more than 10 minutes without getting super fatigued? Why do I have trouble all of a sudden getting up out of a chair or even up off the floor? We live in a beach community. A lot of our patients come in and will explain, hey, I can't even go to the beach with my grandchild because I can't get up off of the sand without help.
Right.
So I think it's really important that people understand that we do have these different fibers without getting too in depth, and they are affected differently with aging and disease process. So let's talk about what happens with aging and disease with muscle mass in general. So leave the fiber types aside for a second. We build muscle mass up till about the age of 30. So that's why it's really important why this ACSM puts out these guidelines for individuals to stay active, and especially our youth, building this muscle mass before they reach the age of 30, because after the age of 30, our ability to produce this muscle mass starts to decline. And it declines about 3 to 8% for about every decade. And once you reach 60, it significantly starts to slope down, and it becomes even harder. So for those of you who are maybe in the 60th decade and up, and you think about how hard you work and exercise and how maybe you don't get the benefit that you used to get from it and how things are that much harder, this is why. There's definitely changes within the body that do affect your ability to create muscle mass. We also, as we age, we have a decrease in neuroconductivity. And what does that mean? It means that the speed at which we transmit information to and from the brain, from the body to the brain and back, that decreases. Our ability to create control of different muscles, to respond quickly to our environment, that decreases. So it's our nerves, they decline in their ability to conduct information. And then we also know that we become more stiff. How many times have you been around somebody, and especially as they get older, I know I'm already feeling it. Like you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, for about the first 3 to 4 steps to get going. Some people that have rheumatic conditions, so maybe rheumatoid arthritis, something like that, an autoimmune disorder that affects their joints, it takes them more like 30 minutes to get going and warm up. So we know as we get older, it gets harder to move, and that's just because there's an innate increase in stiffness of tissue. And then also we know that as we get older, there's changes in hormones. So without getting too in depth, we know that there's a decrease in testosterone, estrogen, growth hormone, that type of stuff. And that affects how our body responds as well. So again, with aging in general, there's just changes in the body that makes us less efficient at survival.
Right.
And we have to work that much harder. Another thing that I think the audience might find interesting, as I was looking around for information for the for today's podcast, was that not only is there a change with the aging process, but that there was a change in fiber effects and how much fibers are affected, these individual fiber types, with things like obesity, type 2 diabetes, inactivity, maybe prolonged bed rest. We've all gone through COVID, and we know that that can take a while to get better. So there's some prolonged bed rest with that. And then also heart failure or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, as many people know it. And so the reason why I felt it was important to go through all the different fiber types is because, let's say for obesity and type 2 diabetes, you have a huge reduction in type 1 fibers, but you actually have an increase in production of 2X fibers. So again, our type 1 are our aerobic or postural endurance fibers. They don't fatigue quickly, so we are losing those, but we somehow gain a higher propensity for our 2X fibers, which are more of our power or 1 minute or 30-second or less fibers.
So both are atrophying over time.
Correct.
But the type 1 more so. So then those postural things you're trying to do, like standing and stuff, is going to get harder and harder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they found with like obesity and type 2 diabetes. Let's take heart rate failure and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which is COPD. Again, you're losing a lot of type 1 fibers, and they're shifting to type 2A and 2X. Now, this makes sense if you think about heart failure and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease affect our vascular system and our ability to carry oxygen. So it would make sense that these type 1 aerobic fibers are not being stimulated as much. And so we're going to shift towards type 2. Another interesting thing is as we get older, we actually lose, this is without the diseases that I just spoke about, we lose type 2 fibers the most. So we lose both, but we lose type 2. So fiber typing and muscle mass is always on a continuum. You're going to build if you stimulate the body and exercise and stress the body so it adapts for survival and creates more fibers. But as we get older and that efficiency of our body to build and produce starts to decline, then we start to lose. So that's sort of a reason why I thought fiber typing might be very interesting to everybody.
Yeah. You could have the combination of that postural issue and then also your strength, maybe for getting up off the sand or the floor or out of a chair, and then also the quickness too.
Correct.
So the type 2X, I assume, are also going down with that too, which are the ones that are maybe important for, like, if you're at fall risk, you're going to quickly, be able to catch yourself and stuff like that.
Right. And we talked also against the neuroconductivity goes down. So if you start to fall, just understanding where you are in space and having your brain send a message to the system of quick react. And even that's decreasing.
Gotcha.
So there's a huge continuum in fiber typing and changing. You can change fiber types with exercise. If you do more power quick training, you're going to shift some of your strength endurance fibers towards the 2X fibers. And if you're doing more aerobic training in the sense of long walks, running marathons, swimming a long time, then you're going to shift your continuum to building more type 1 fibers. So it's a pretty interesting science. So without getting too deep, hopefully that gives the audience a little bit of an idea of what's happening in their bodies.
So some of those things sounds like people like swimming or something like that. That would be something that would actually help them be able to tolerate standing better too. If they're improving their muscle function in their spine because they swim, then it should cross over and help them with their ability to stand longer or do things on land as well.
Correct. And that's what you and I have learned through our exercise physiology classes and through physical therapy schools, that there's a specificity of training. You train for what you want to do. Sometimes there's crossover. You're going to increase strength, but that's why fiber typing is so interesting, is what kind of strength do you need? Do you need to be able to stand a long time? Do you need to be able to walk around Disneyland, stay on your feet, stand in line for 2 hours waiting for a ride unless you buy that quick fast pass? Or are we talking about you need to do something like climb a flight of stairs, run after a toddler really fast, anything simple like that, getting up and down off the floor, something that requires a little more power and strength, then you need to train for that.
Good. Yeah. So do you want to go through, are there any other exercise specifically that you think we should go through in terms of for certain types of patients, do you have any examples of those as far as, people that might have fall risk?
Can
or
I
something
ask
like
for
that?
one? Because
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
listening eagerly here.
Go for it.
Sure,
Yeah.
Paul.
Aging baby boomer that I am, falling. My late father fell and died. This is after having stroke, cancer, heart attacks, everything. Breezed through that. Fell is what killed him. His doctor told him before he fell, so one thing I can't predict what's going to happen. You fall, you break a hip, whatever, something, bad things happen. I can handle cancer, I can handle other things. I find myself slipping and not shuffling my feet more and other things. That seems to be the common complaint as we get older, at some point, falling. What do we do to prevent that? Or
Ooh,
improve that?
Well, if we keep it to more of just a muscle training thing for right now, because falling, I mean, there's a lot of factors with falling.
I know your balance declines and you get unsteady.
Yeah,
on
and
your
the
feet
neuroconductivity, which we're not really like diving deep into today, but falling, you really need to work on strength, but you also need to work on reaction, and so
Yes.
you've got to work on activities that really force you to take a step. So, for instance, I have patients who are fall risks, and when we stand in the parallel bars and we're working on balance activities, their first gut reaction is to grab the bars with their hands. And as we get further along through their fall training, working within the bars, I start to take away the bar as an option. It's there as a mandatory necessity, but really they need to learn to step. It's called a stepping strategy. So they need to quickly learn to react. So not only are we working on activities like that, but then we're also working on those type 2A and 2X fibers, because those are quick reactive fibers, especially those 2X. So doing activities that make them move quickly is really important.
My dad fell so quickly as he aged in his 80s or into the 90s here. Any little bump in the road, any little threshold would throw him. And I find myself starting to move in that direction. Is it because we don't lift our feet enough, we're dragging them more, or we don't react fast enough, or other things?
Yes.
Yes to all that. Okay. Well, I think that's an exercise I wish I knew more about to help work on that. And you guys do work on that kind of stuff.
We do. Yes.
We do. And I think that is an excellent topic for Justin to bring.
I think I'd love to hear a whole topic.
We'll
on
do it.
that.
Yes.
I'll invite Jen back too. Yeah.
Falling. What simple thing? My dad was worried about cancer. He was worried about heart attack, strokes, all that stuff. That's not what killed him. Falling.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's many things that go with falling, but with falling, you need to be strong enough and quick enough to catch yourself. Exercise, we know, builds bone mass and diminishes osteoporosis, which is a decrease in bone mass and density. But also we need to keep that muscle mass there. And we had talked about sarcopenia earlier. I just wanted to bring up this term for the listeners in case they hear it so that they know what it is. But basically the definition of sarcopenia is a musculoskeletal disease. That's what they call it, defined by progressive loss of muscle mass and strength. And that's basically what you and I are trying to help our patients avoid when they come in, and what any strength and conditioning specialist will do with their clients is basically avoid that loss. There's lots of things that can cause it, like we talked about earlier, hormonal changes, okay? And then other things that happen with aging, and like I said, the type 2 fibers. So again, that's another reason why falling becomes more prevalent as we get older, besides the neuroconductivity loss, but also the strength and speed in which to catch ourselves.
That's the key, how quickly you caught yourself.
Yeah.
My dad would go down so quickly. That wasn't something, if he stumbled, he'd catch himself.
Right.
But as he got older, anything, it was like he'd face plant. And I did that about a year ago. I was in the backyard and I was stumbling around or something. It was dark. And I tripped over something. And next thing I knew, I'm on the ground.
Yeah.
And like, how did that happen? I hit hard. I didn't even catch myself.
Yeah.
And it scared me.
Fast twitch fibers. We gotta.
Yeah.
And like we talked about, again, that the reason why we lose some of that muscle mass or have the sarcopenia as we get older that can affect and increase fall risk is our nutritional intake can change as we get older. We're fighting obesity. Everything's so multifaceted. We're fighting obesity. There's more insulin resistance. Okay. And interestingly enough, another side note that would be a very interesting another topic for another day is skeletal muscle is one of the major regions that releases insulin when we take in sugar through our food.
Really?
So if we lose muscle mass, we're losing that ability to control our blood sugar as we get older.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Because that was, he suffered from that. My insulin or diabetes, whatever, proclivity for diabetes or something. Wow.
Right.
All this fits together with your muscles and stuff here?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
Yes, it's super important. So what we want to
Takeaways.
look at.
Yeah, we're down to the last couple of minutes. Takeaways.
All right. Takeaways here is we want to look at what kind of exercise we want to do based on what we know we lose. So we know we lose on a continuum just with aging type 2 fibers, but then we talked about with some of the associated issues that we develop over time, cardiac issues, insulin resistance issues, we need to be able to stimulate that muscle. So the crux of what we're here to say is, what do you really need? What are your comorbidities or other disease issues you have as you grow older? And what are your functional needs? That's what you and I look at in the clinic quite often.
So specific to each patient's issues.
Right.
So their background history, their medical history, and then also creating a plan that gets them back to their goals, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, if you're somebody that struggles and still needs to go to be able to stand for long periods of time, be up and just be generally active for long periods of time. I know a lot of older individuals now who are working in retail. I see a lot of them. They come in, they talk about their day, they're on their feet all day. Then maybe they need to do something that's more aerobic in the sense of swimming, going on an elliptical, a bike, you know, reaching that 150 minutes of aerobic exercise as the ACSM suggests is really important for them.
Right.
But then again, there's lots of studies that you and I have looked at where high resistance training is really important for developing those type 2 fibers. So you need to be doing weights that are challenging to do, that you can't do any more lifting more than about 6 to 12 reps. So you need to be lifting that heavy if your body and joints will allow.
Right.
And I know you talked about that in a previous podcast, how important that was. If you're somebody who needs more power or able to get up out of a chair or able to climb a flight of stairs or do something that requires higher energy, heavy housework, climbing up a hill in the backyard to fix a sprinkler. I mean, I'm coming up with so many patient scenarios. You should be lifting heavier and about 6 to 12 reps, no more. And at the 12th rep, you should be bottoming out, meaning you shouldn't be able to do another rep.
Right.
That's
So
really
high
important.
enough resistance.
So it sounds like you're not just dealing with people and they come in and say, this hurts.
Right.
You're saying, how did it get hurt? And what do you do in your lifestyle that's caused? Well, let's look at the bigger picture. You're climbing up a hill. You're standing more often. You're falling, whatever. Let's look at the bigger picture and come up with something to address that, not just let's make this arm hurt less.
Correct.
Right. Exactly.
It's taking the patient's whole requirement all together, what their life's needs are and what other issues they're dealing with in their life, and putting it together to come up with a comprehensive plan for them. That's so important and allows for someone to be able to be successful in what they're doing. The other comment I would say is stick with it. Unless it's hurting you or causing, physical harm. Really, a lot of the strength training that they looked at, so the higher level repetitions, a lot of those benefits aren't seen in an older population because, like I said, the efficiency of the body to adapt is slower.
Right.
So you need to go for more like 16 weeks before you're probably going to see a change. Whereas when you're younger, you're probably going to see a significant change around 6 to 8 weeks of training. So that's really important too. You and I often see people get them going, they go home and work on stuff for a little while, and then they come back for an update to their program.
Because it hurt. They didn't see anything happen. All right, if they want to see something happen in their lives, how do they find you guys?
Come to Fyzical Lake Forest.
And let's spell that.
Yeah, Fyzical. And we're in Lake Forest. The number there is 949-716-1800.
Well, I listened to the show and I thought, I can actually take advantage of it. We did do that, and we're in the midst of training right now. I'd love to come back and talk about that sometime, see what
Sounds
that
great.
works, because you're offering something we couldn't find anywhere else. Give us again the website or anything else.
Yeah, it's a Lake Forest. Let's see, it's physical.com/lake-forest.
Okay.
Yep.
And you can meet the.
Jennifer Manning.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Thanks. All right. Well, there you have it. The real story about how health can be simplified if you understand what's going on. Tune in each and every time we try and dive through these topics and see if we can break it down into a simple guide to a healthier life. Sponsored by Fyzical Balance Center in Lake Forest. As we stream live on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation.